Today being May 20th, 2015, I'm going to open up the Charlton Planning Board meeting for tonight. First thing is bills on the agenda. We have a bill from Graves Engineering totaling $3,847.60. Each of the separate invoices are listed here. We have another bill from Karen LaCroix for $57.39, and we have a bill for postage for $22.54. The invoices are here as needed for review. We also have a bill from Staples for $22.52, Poland Springs for $2.59, and for cell phone use of $80.93. The invoices are all here as listed. Do I have a motion to accept the bills as read?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Want to sign them? We have some correspondence. There's an invitation for Thursday, June 11th, for the Central Mass Regional Planning Commissioners' 52nd Annual Dinner Meeting. Is there anything you'd like to comment on that, Alan?
It's just that Karen Polito is the speaker, and if anyone wants to go, we can make the reservation. It's in our budget if you'd like to go. Just let us know.
We have a report from Graves Engineering. It's dated May 6, 2015, Griffin Realty Trust. This project is not yet officially under construction. Upon arriving, I observed that the site had been cut clear of scrub trees and stumps. It appeared that this recent work is consistent with their land, with their clearing limitations, with their clearing limits. GEI understands that the engineer of record, Burton Engineering, has indicated that the owner cleared the land to make it more marketable and may wish to begin construction next year. We have another one from Graves Engineering. It's in regards to 29 Oxford Road Solar Farm Facility, the Regio Solars. The 0.65 MW ground-mounted solar electrical generating facility project is under construction and is being managed by Regio Solar. A representative on site by the site superintendent, Michaels, will support from project manager Elizabeth Driscoll. On site, at the request of Michael Regio Solar, to meet the request of work completed and work remaining upon arrival, I met with Mr. Tricky name there. Let's just say Michaels again, who reviewed work done to this date as followed. Solar array racks and panels are nearly completed. Only a few panels remain to be installed. Concrete pads for electrical equipment has been poured. Fence may begin next week. Overall, the project is about 75% completed. Should fully be completed by the end of May. This is the one on Oxford Road. There are some photographs here from Graves Engineering to show how the project's going on Oxford Road. EBI Consulting, invitation to comment, Potter Village Road, Worcester, Mass. Pursuant to Section 106 of the National Historical Preservation, Verizon Wireless provided this notice of a proposed telecommunication facility installation at the address listed above. EBI would like to inquire if you would be interested in commenting on this project's proposal. Verizon Wireless proposal to install a Verizon Wireless is proposed to build a 160-foot sheltered structural pine tree and to install associated equipment. Please refer to the attached project plan to complete details regarding this proposed project. We are also seeking comments related to the proposed project potential effort on historical property. Please submit your comments regarding to the proposed project to EBI Consultant.
Yeah, that's the one I told you that, they're putting together an application to you for a special permit. But for some reason, there's a historical property listing on Potter Village Road where they're doing it, and they didn't call, they just sent that out, we're on the mailing list. I certainly have nothing to comment on, but it just seems strange that out in that area there'd be something historic that triggered that.
Will they have to come before the board for,
No, it won't affect anything in terms of your special permit review at all. I don't know whether or not they have to go to the local historic commission or not, but that's a state, that's a Commonwealth of Massachusetts trigger under the state historic register, so they'll handle it, but I've just never seen one out in that area. If it was the center of town, I could understand it.
we have a subject, Nick Burton, Monday, May 11, 2015, the Charlton Bike Pad course. The town planner, planning board, and Department of Public Work Management. Transportation staff of the Central Mass Regional Planners Commission is beginning to plan our 2015 regional bicycle and pedestrian count activity. Following the efforts of last year's program, we were provided an opportunity for a limited number of counts in CMRPC communities. Whether it is in your communities downtown are another area where these activities may result in count, a specific location where you think bicycles or pedestrians use is increasing, or where you are planning to improve bicycle and pedestrian use. The counts are planned to be completed during peak hours on one weekday and one weekend day between June and September and October. This is...
Yeah, what that is exactly what you said. Last summer, if you remember, as part of our village center, they did the counts, so this is going out across the whole county. I would suggest that we request that they do another one, so now we can compare it to last year.
Yeah.
Same location, right at the center by Carpentier Plaza. If you'd like, I can send them an email about it.
You were doing the Pan Mass town.
Skew it a little bit.
That'll be a bike count.
But if you like, I can just call or email him and put in that location.
I'll bring the kids that day.
We have another subject for a letter to the planning board. Thank you for your email and attached correspondence from your clients on the matter of disassembling performance guaranteed conditions of the recent Snake Hill commercial solar generator array at the Snake Hill site in Charlton, Mass. Unfortunately, the attached letter still does not provide any confirmation that your client is expected from the authorization that the planning board has under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A / the Mass Zoning Act, that empowers the planning board to request this very reasonable, needed, and cost-effective disassembly performance guaranteed request on the route of condition of the site plan. We discussed that with...
Yeah, what happened is, as you know, just to refresh your memory, you required it and told the gentleman from National Grid, show us an exemption. So all he did is on his own stationery, a week later, he wrote again and said, I'm exempt. So I wrote back and said, show us something under state zoning law that you're exempt. And Michelle Buck called me from Leicester the other day, curious, because they said the same thing to them.
Yeah.
But she said they insinuated, this is how she was, they insinuated that Charlton's planning board understood and accepted it.
Oh.
So I told her what really happened, and that's where it stands. They're required to give us that performance guarantee like any other applicant before they get their certificate of operation.
Yeah.
Unless they can prove otherwise, which they haven't done.
We have a notice from the Oxford Zoning Board of Appeals. Please take note that a public hearing will be held on Thursday, April 30th, 2015, at 7:10 p.m. by the Oxford Zoning Board of Appeals. The applicant requests a special permit to allow the existence of a pre-existing non-conforming use of use to construct a single dwelling on the same property of an existing kennel to be occupied by the owner of the property and kennel business. Different. The Zoning Board of Appeals, notification to the Town of Oxford, April 21st, 2015, Oxford Crossing LLC, to request a special permit and variance, a special permit to allow ground signs and canopy signs that exceed the maximum square footage, and variation to advertise an additional business on ground sign pursuant. Notification of a special permit decision, Town of Oxford. Applicant is BWC Stillwater Realty LLC. Premises affected, 115 and 117 Kelly Street, Auburn, Mass. For access to parcel in Oxford, Mass. and 26 Maple Ave, North Oxford. Upon request for a special permit, the application for a special permit under the provisions of Chapter XX of the Oxford zoning bylaw to allow for a 10.1 MW AC ground-mounted solar energy installation consisting of approximately 37,500 modulars on 10 parcels of land in conjunction with site plan review and approval. More solar farms? And again, special notice for a special permit. Application, BWC Stillwater Rivers LLC. Affected premises is 115, 117 Kelly Street, Auburn, Mass. For access to parcel in Oxford. Upon request for a special permit for the applicant, a special permit under the provisions of Chapter XX of the Oxford zoning bylaw to allow for a 4.0 MW AC ground-mounted solar energy installation consisting of approximately 13,250 modulars on 7 parcels of land in conjunction with site plan review and approval. So they're building 2 of them side by side.
That keeps them ownership-wise under that megawattage permitting, that keeps it cleaner.
All right. Being 7:15, we have a public hearing for Burlingame and Son, reduced frontage and common driveway, special permit application, Partridge Hill Road. At this time, I would like to excuse myself from this hearing and turn this over to a co-chairman.
If you could just,
If you would just read that.
Madam Chairman, if you could just procedurally, the board can vote to appoint the alternate on this hearing, which is Mr. Holtman.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You okay?
Yeah. Notice of public hearing, Charlton Planning Board, April 30th, 2015, in accordance with section 4.2.4.8, 513, and 7.2.7 of Charlton zoning bylaw. The Charlton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, May 20th, 2015 at 7:15 p.m. in the Planning Board office in the Charlton Municipal Office Building, 37 Main Street, Charlton, Massachusetts. On the application of Para Land Surveying, Inc., on behalf of Elliott P. Burlingame and Sons, Inc., 91, number 6 Schoolhouse Road, Charlton, Mass. 01507, for approval of 2 proposed reduced frontage lots on Partridge Hill Road to construct a single-family home on each lot, assesses map 54, block C, lot 1.7, and for approval of a common driveway proposed to be constructed from Oxford Road to serve the 2 proposed houses. Copies of the reduced frontage and common driveway special permit application are available for inspection at the planning board office and town clerk's office during regular business hours. Any person interested or wishing to be heard should appear at the time and place designated.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Alan Gordon. I'm the town planner. I work for the board, and I'll give about a 3-minute overview of what the procedure is. The applicant's representative, Mr. Parra, is out of state today, so he's not here, but the applicant is here with another representative, and they can answer any of your questions. Under Massachusetts and state local zoning, this is a special permit, and it's 2 permits combined in 1 hearing. The planning board has done this very regularly in many cases that are similar. One special permit being considered is called a reduced frontage special permit, and as with most Massachusetts communities, in your zoning, if a parcel is at least 5 acres, an applicant can request to reduce the frontage down to no more than 50 feet. Also, there's a common driveway request here. I'll briefly describe what is before the board. The property fronts on Partridge Hill Road, but also has back access out on Oxford Road, right? Yeah, I'm just looking at it from here. It's about 12 acres. One parcel that is being proposed to split out of the 2 12 acres is about 5.5 and one is 6.5. You usually get the reduced frontage that way of at least 5 acres each. In this particular case, the applicant is not going down to the minimum. It's going to be about 100 and 110 for each of the lots in terms of frontage. Normally, a regular lot is 175 feet of frontage in the agricultural zone, which is about 80% of the town. So you get a handful of these every year in terms of that type of thing. The applicant would be required under any approval to file language in the deed that states for any current and future owner that it's a reduced frontage special permit and it shall not be split any further. The second part of the hearing is the common driveway, and you usually get common driveways when wetlands are involved, and here we go again. That's why people do it. If they wanted to come in from Partridge Hill Road, either with single driveways or a common driveway of a normal length of 500 to 600 feet under the bylaw, they can't because there's wetland on that side of the property. So again, like in most Massachusetts communities, we do not require the driveway to come in from the frontage. Come in from any road access, and the back access is Oxford Road. So the applicant is proposing about an 1,100-foot long common driveway with an easement over such. They acknowledge that they'll need a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals for length, and they're on the Zoning Board of Appeals docket in June, I think the first week of June, for a public hearing, and they're notifying the butters the way you notify the butters. So that's an overview of it. I'd be glad to answer any questions, or if the applicant wants to add anything or clarify anything, please feel free.
Hi, I'm Attorney Anne Marie Hurley, and I represent Mr. Burlingame. I don't have a lot that I can add to that. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Mr. Gordon. I would let you know, though, that Mr. Burlingame has 2 people in particular in mind that are interested in both these lots, and they're both here. Both Mr. Porcaro and Mr. Porcaro, father and son, who would like Mr. Burlingame to build them houses on these lots. So, you can answer any questions you might have.
And again, procedurally, for folks who have been here, the board usually asks questions first of the applicant or their reps, and then when the board recognizes people from the audience, we just need a name and an address for each person who speaks for Jane's minutes. Thank you.
Do we have any questions?
Alan, generally, what's the width required on a common driveway?
The same as any other driveway.
Okay.
I believe it's an 18-foot wide width on this particular driveway,
Yep.
which is on the plan.
Yep.
There is no particular requirement, the difference between the 1 and the 2 under the town's driveway permits.
Okay, all right.
Alan, there's requirements in the bylaw for slope and site distance and stuff like that.
Yes.
Do you look at that? Does Graves look at that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We always check that, Michael and I, Graves, our peer review.
Okay. And this conforms?
Yes, the only issue here is the length goes beyond, and they'll need a variance. It is their own risk of whether they get the variance or not.
Yep.
You know, and that, you have other applicants who go through that on all types of projects, that they realize they're gonna get a building permit, they have to get that variance. If they don't get it, they're back to square and they have to try to redesign or not do their project, one or the other.
Also,
Any
What's
other
that too?
questions?
I do have 2 comment letters.
Yep, yeah,
Uh,
go right ahead.
Well, one is a comment letter and one, we distribute the plan, as you know, to boards and departments, and, John McGrath is the former chairman of the planning board and he's a selectman, and he made a comment back that he didn't understand why this was coming forward with this length, because he didn't see any wetlands on the plan that they received, but he didn't notice, and it wasn't labeled on the sheet apparently that he looked at,
Okay.
that there is the standard wetlands involved that triggered this, so that answered his question. We did then receive a letter from the building commissioner that I'd like to comment on after you receive it. You can read it or have me read it, but it's a comment letter from Kurt Meskis, the building commissioner.
Do you wanna read it?
Okay. While reviewing the plans submitted for this proposed project that includes, and he describes, I'll skip that paragraph, he describes that it's reduced frontage and common driveway. And then he states that, under the zoning bylaw, the reduced frontage drive cannot exceed 600 feet in length. The proposed access is, over the 600 feet. And I don't believe it meets the reduced lot frontage requirements of this section, therefore the special permit should not be issued. The common driveway is 1,000 feet in length, twice the allowed, more than twice the allowed. Given those requirements, I do not recommend the issuance of the variance of the total length of this common driveway. I fully respect Kurt, he's entitled to his recommendations, but I don't agree in terms of what's before this board right now. If he wishes to oppose the variance, he has every right to do so at the zoning board. But in terms of your special permit, I can't recommend on anything that comes before you, whether it's a subdivision, site plan, a special permit, legally, that you deny anything based on the fact that they need a variance. There have been mass appellate court cases for decades that have ruled that it's an applicant's right to pursue all the various permit options prior to getting the building permit. There's a famous case from a McDonald's in Seekonk about 30 years ago, that a planning board in Seekonk approved special permit site plan, but they needed a variance for parking and they hadn't gotten it, and the abutters lost. The judge said, an applicant has every right to pursue these options in whatever order they wish to go before they apply for that building permit. So the applicant knows they need the variance, they've applied for it. If they get it, that's their opportunity. If they don't get it, they can appeal it or they can abandon their project. So on his comment about, I request that you deny it based on the problems of needing a variance, with all due respect, I cannot recommend that.
This is because this is more compliant, or closer to being compliant than other plans in the past with the frontage and stuff, so.
You're correct in that most of the reduced frontage we get are minimal. They're only down to the 50 feet. We have on one lot 105 and one 110 out on Partridge Hill in terms of
So
width.
what's the length of the drive, the
Yeah,
length?
and they are not coming in from Partridge Hill. The Partridge Hill front portion of the property for several acres is wetland. They're accessing from Oxford Road and they're building back along the Oxford Road portion in 2 dry areas. If you flip the page, they show the 2 building footprints of exactly where they'll be located, highlighted in yellow.
So does Kurt Moore have a problem, an issue with the driveway frontage, access frontage, is it more or less?
Oh, the length, yeah,
Oh,
he doesn't, he's
But like you
has a
said,
problem with the
a
length doesn't meet the bylaw, and
var-
because they need a variance,
Yeah.
he recommended denial, but
Okay.
legally, I can't recommend it based on previous procedures in Massachusetts, it's allowable.
Yep,
It's
absolutely,
allowable.
absolutely is.
Now, does the fire department have to look at this at all in terms of access?
What they do is they look at it in terms of, they comment, I should say, if they have a problem with the turnaround and they want it adjusted. They did not comment on this.
Okay.
Then there is a turnaround proposed in the back to make sure that, because there's 2 houses back there, can a fire truck turn around, and there is a design
Yep.
turnaround.
Yeah.
It's right in front of you.
Yep.
Now do we vote on any questions?
I have a question.
If you just identify your name and address,
Oh,
Deb.
I'm Debbie
No, I
Burlingame,
know.
I live on 19 Partridge Hill Road. I'm a little confused about the wetland thing. as far as I know, it's all wetlands back there. I mean, I've lived there for 35 years. One thing I don't understand is they're accessing it from Oxford Road, but the houses will be on Partridge Hill Road. I kind of don't get that. Like, how does that work?
Madam Chairman, if I could through the chair to the applicant, I guess that's a question to you. Will the post office consider the addresses on Oxford Road or Partridge? It's really usually the postal service that makes the
How will
decision.
will you be able to get to the house from Partridge Hill Road?
No.
Oxford Road only.
Then why are you calling the address Partridge Hill Road?
Well, it's not the address, Deb. It's for the purpose of the hearing. You list since it's a raw land that hasn't been developed yet, you list the address as fronting on the road with the legal frontage, and that's Partridge Hill. But then it really, every home builder goes with what the postal service tells them to do, and it'll be up to the local postmaster to decide whether he wants the addresses to be Oxford or Partridge. I'm guessing he's gonna assign Oxford Road addresses to these houses, but it's up to him.
But I'm still not clear on the wetland thing because, I mean, those other houses, I'm sorry, but they were real close to wetlands, and these are my neighbors, and I think I can't speak for them, but they would probably agree with me on that.
So,
Alan, oh, sorry.
So look at your map.
They,
Come walk the property.
they've got work within the buffer zone. They'll have to file with the Conservation Commission.
I would assume so.
No, I can't cut a tree down unless it's 100 feet away from wetlands.
Right.
Yeah, prior to getting a building permit, the building commissioner will either check on his own or the applicant will go to conservation. Have you talked?
Yeah, Rick Parra has filed with Conservation Commission, so it is pending.
And presumably they'll review the wetland line as part of that
Oh,
application.
absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, Todd Gerard will go out and walk it,
Yep.
the conservation agent for the town.
My name's Karen Barbado. I live at 27. I've been there 33 years. There's no question in my mind that it's quite a wetlands with the wildlife, with the flora and fauna that live there. And I'm a little confused because I would like to know exactly where the frontage is on Partridge Hill in the middle of the swamp. And this plan is different from what Mr. Burlingame originally opposed how many years ago? The property is already being cleared. It's in the middle of Mosquito Valley.
In Beaver City.
Yeah, what ones haven't been killed?
Well, that flooded my land.
And originally he proposed a driveway from Oxford Road. Again, a very, very, very long driveway. Now there's talk of frontage on Partridge Hill. Originally he was only able to develop 2 of those acres. Now the acreage has increased. I'm wondering, is there gonna be changes every few years?
I can clarify if you come here for one moment and just show you. Again, frontage is for zoning purposes only. Here's Partridge Hill Road, here's the frontage, but they're not coming in. Everything from this dotted line forward is swamp according to the plan that Paris submitted. The dry is way back here. So since the parcel does neck back to Oxford Road, they're proposing a joint driveway from Oxford in, and they'll put a house here and a house here. The Conservation Commission will review to confirm that whether this is accurate or not, that it's dry up here. But for our purposes of running the hearing, since it's undeveloped land and the legal frontage of where the lot meets our frontage width requirement is Partridge Hill, we list it as Partridge Hill. But the Postal Service most likely will assign Oxford Road addresses because of the driveway and the mailman going in that way for delivery. So that's what it's all about.
One of my huge concerns is we all have wells. We love our well water. We don't want town water. We don't want bottled water. The swamp is the aquifer for our underground streams that provide the water for our wells. I would like to know that this property, this wetlands, are not gonna be developed, because again, his plan is different from what he originally proposed. I believe Mrs. Burlingame can confirm that, because you were at the last abutters meeting where we opposed the driveway and the fact that he had to displace part of the wetlands to put that there. We were assured that he would have to replace the wetlands that he destroyed in another place, but that would be up to us to make sure that was done, which
No,
is.
that wasn't up to us, that was up to the scientists.
That we're gonna
got
make
a
sure
whole
that he
group, yeah.
reproduced everything
Yeah.
that he destroyed. And again, because we've lived in the town so long, and part of the reason we bought this town is the beauty and what it has to offer, as well as school systems and all of that. So we understand people wanting to buy, and Charlton is a great place to live. But we would like to make sure that we don't destroy the beauty of the town in the process. Or our wells, and I know we've been
Or our
told that
wetlands.
5 to
Where-
10
where-
years down the line, if our wells have problems, that the town can't do anything about that. And on one level, I understand that. On the other level, it would take that long for damage in the swamp to affect our wells.
Madam Chairman, if I may, again, the two comments. One, the points that she brings up are valid points to bring to Conservation and Board of Health. It's not passing the buck, it's their legal authority. And two, our only legal authority tonight is two things: the splitting of the parcel into two, that it meets the reduced frontage diameter layouts, and the design of the driveway. So, again, it's fine for people to bring up other concerns, but we can direct them. Definitely talk to Todd Gerard at Conservation, and talk to Lanny Criasser at the Board of Health on both of those concerns. They have jurisdiction, and
Okay.
it's
Board of
definitely
Health
heading.
and Conservation.
Yes, absolutely.
Because again, I know that this won't necessarily, the way we feel adamantly about our properties and our life in Charlton won't necessarily change, because the town is growing, and I realize it's gonna happen and changes are gonna occur. And we just wanna keep it,
We wanna protect our wetlands, basically, that's the bottom line, I would say.
which in turn sustains all of us in one way or another.
Sorry.
That's my
Lost
goal.
I agree.
I cut you off.
Nope.
I spent all my time down in that swamp.
Yeah, those are valid concerns too. For the Conservation Board of Health, and they're very, very helpful, they'll answer everything. Our job is just to look at
We
what
understand that.
is on
Thank you.
these plans and.
Right.
So can we?
Are there any other questions
Any other
related
questions?
to the special permit? We can't go off into areas we don't have jurisdiction.
Antoinette Parvis, 70 Oxford Road. Good evening. I'm not sure if my question applies either to this. I'm the driveway right next to the property, and I'm on board with the property. I've met the neighbors. I wish you a lot of luck, and there's no changing that. They'd be lovely neighbors. The concern that we've had from the beginning, and I've spoken, are you Mr. Brown? No. Oh, you weren't, I was talking to you. Is about how the electricity is gonna go back to that property. And it's from a point of view as aesthetics, naturally, we have underground electricity, so, I don't wanna see poles going up the driveway. And I guess the other question that came to mind recently after talking to another neighbor is how the potential owners are gonna light the driveway. Cause that can look like a landing strip going from Oxford Road all the way to the back. So those are our concerns. Is it appropriate to bring that before this board tonight?
Well, that affects the wildlife in the swamp
Excuse me,
too,
through the
right?
chair.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I
Well,
apologize.
can you guys answer that question for us?
I actually have no plans of lighting it at this point, just because I'm trying to get one step at a time at this point, but, I'm not gonna give anyone a hard time. If she doesn't want me to light it all up, I probably won't. It's not a big deal to me at this point. I just wanna get in there and get this thing.
And there are no lights proposed on the plan, so.
Yeah.
And the power lines going down, is that?
Well, let me ask a question through the chair to the applicant. Are you proposing at this stage above or below?
Above.
Okay. If it was a subdivision, Chapter 41 subdivision plan, the planning board mandates underground under that law under Massachusetts. But under the zoning law, it's, for this particular type of permit, we just don't have jurisdiction one way or the other. If you had jurisdiction, you could underground it, but you just don't. I'm sorry.
So, excuse me, so you're telling me the poles are gonna start from Oxford Road?
Yeah, and the reason why is because when you get up there, it crosses the gas line.
Right.
In order to cross the gas line, we gotta go overhead.
That's a good point.
Which we've-
Tennessee gas station
Is there
right.
any compromise as far as to start the power lines even halfway back? Just to clear
Well,
my view of the
you're gonna
yard?
be, in other words, the compromise, in other words, it's probably about triple to go underground put a big burden on them, or you go overhead, and then if you just look side the road, you're
With
so
site plan
close.
review, you'd have authority, but it's not.
It's poles
Yeah.
It's
anyway.
poles there anyway,
It's not
Well,
like,
I don't have poles going right.
the pole is right there at the driveway now.
Right, but it's all the way on the corner right now.
There's only one
These
drive.
poles right now would go like right up my, even
Well,
if,
there's only
even when
one
I,
to the
even when
other
I put
side.
a fence up, we're gonna see overhead right
But
in
even
my
if this was
property.
one lot,
You know. So that's where I would, be resistant to this project because that is not acceptable to me as a direct neighbor. And that's why I proposed, is there a compromise to start the overhead electricity, if you saw how the road goes, clear that my yard and go towards the road where the trees are. But to have it go right up my driveway, aside from my driveway, is the direct, view in my property.
We just don't have authority to.
We don't have authority, but, is there any chance maybe you could start it underground and then bring it up, just to be neighborly? I mean, if we don't have the
That's the
authority.
compromise
Well,
that I would
if-
propose.
If it was to come out the same way, and if she was willing to, if you were willing to pick up the price of it, underground, whatever it is,
Why would I
over the
pay for
cost
that?
of the post, I mean,
But
then
why
I
would
would be willing.
why would I pay for that?
Why would I wanna spend
Well, then
thousands of dollars
it's
for
wrong where you're relating,
You
then
need
you're
something.
not really concerning
Excuse
yourself
me,
with
we
the
just,
effect of the
we have
neighbor.
a time agenda that we have to
Right.
follow, and this
Well,
conversation, and
I hate to be argumentative, but this is gonna be a problem for me. So
Good,
I'm
yeah.
gonna need to know what I need to do to
Well,
get
basically,
this
if I can
resolved.
then put a closure to this,
Yeah.
I'm not passing the buck. If we had authority, I would recommend it. When we have subdivisions and people want to go above ground, we don't allow them to. It's Massachusetts, it's weather and all that. If it's a site plan review, we have authority. But for a reduced frontage and for a common driveway special permit under Massachusetts, we just have no authority, ma'am. I was hoping that he would volunteer and he wouldn't do it.
Right.
Maybe, and I don't know, maybe if you brought the discussion up at the zoning board variance piece, maybe it's related, or maybe they'll say they don't have authority either. I just don't work for them. But unfortunately, beyond you expressing it and having the discussion just now, it's not an item that we can take under advisement one way or the other. I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's why. Yep.
do we have additional questions from our audience? No? Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Procedurally, again, you're considering separately two different permits in one expedited hearing, which you just closed. The first one is the reduced frontage, which strictly is addressing the creation of the two lots, separate from the common driveway, which would be the second permit. If you wish. Yes.
Yep.
If you wish, I can propose, as I do with many of them, draft conditions for consideration.
Absolutely.
For any permit that comes before you, an application, you always provide a 2-year approval notice as your first condition, that an applicant has no more than 2 years to pull a building permit. That way people don't come forward and just put projects aside. Second of all, a condition that obviously the two lots need an approval not required 81P plan to do the split, which Mr. Para has prepared. But you require a statement on that plan, cross-referencing the permit, that a reduced frontage lots will not be further divided. There's no way to create any more lots out of this. And third, related to that, what you require in other reduced frontage, that the applicant shall put language in both of the deeds for the lots, referencing section 5.13 of the Charlton zoning bylaw, that again, they won't be further divided or reduced in area in any way, or to create any additional lots. A fourth condition you consider in all permits is, prior to the issue of an occupancy permit for either of the two reduced frontage lots, the planning board needs to sign the certificate of occupancy. It goes around from the building commissioner to different departments, and that way, by signing it, we're first confirming that everything was properly completed under the A&R signing and such. So, for that particular permit, those are 4 draft conditions.
Do I have a motion, to accept the reduced frontage, plan creating 2 lots with Alan's conditions?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
For the reduced, for the common driveway, I put forward 5 draft conditions for your consideration. The first one, again, is the 2-year building permit thing. The second one is to, as we do on anything that has a variance, to confirm that a variance is required for the driveway length, and no building permit shall be issued until a variance is properly approved, and if approved, filed at the Worcester District Registry of Deeds and provided to the building commissioner. Third, as you've done with every common driveway, prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit for the second house, the applicant has to provide through their attorney an agreement signed by both property owners who are buying the houses, a mutual maintenance and access responsibility agreement that will be filed at the Registry of Deeds and a recorded copy provided to the planning board. That way, both homeowners and any future homeowners have connected to their deeds rights of access, a common driveway across both lots, and also rights to take care of it and maintain it, and responsibility to maintain it. Fourth, a common condition that the common driveway is approved solely for the 2-house access as detailed on the plan and will not be proposed for any additional use in any manner. And fifth, the condition that prior to the issuance of either occupancy permit for the house, the planning board will sign off on the occupancy permit, confirming to the building commissioner that your conditions have been met.
Now, does that, if they sell that, either one of them sell it, that comes back to the new buyers would have to agree with that, or it's part of the deed?
Yes, there'll be 2 things. One, there'll be reference in the deed.
Okay.
And then on file at the Worcester District Registry of Deeds, cross-referenced in the deed will be that mutual access and maintenance agreement.
Okay.
You've done about 15 of these over the past several years, and same template for every one of them.
Do I have a motion to accept the application for the common driveway with all of Ellen's conditions?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
One other procedural point to the applicant, required now is the signing of an A&R plan. And the A&R plan that Mr. Parris submitted, and he's out of town this week, he's out of state, did not include the cross-reference language for the footnotes required. So we do need him to adjust that. So I'd like to contact him next week and ask him to submit a fresh one for the board to sign with those footnotes.
The footnotes regarding
Wasn't
the
it?
cross-reference language?
Yes, yes,
I'll send them an
yeah,
email.
sure. And he'll be back next week. I understand he's out of state. And again, through the board, I know that there's frustration and concern when neighborhoods change, but there are a few other steps in the process. The Zoning Board of Appeals for the variance, talking to the Board of Health about the well concerns and safety and all wetlands concerns. Todd Gerard is an excellent wetland scientist who works for the town. He's one office over. Todd will be walking it. Todd will be staffing the hearing for the Conservation Commission. So those steps and for the neighborhood to address those concerns are next.
Will we get further as abutters, will we get further paperwork if there's anything, other meetings?
On the Zoning Board of Appeals, I believe it went out already.
Okay.
So if you've received it, then
Yeah,
you're on
yeah,
that
yeah.
list. Conservation, is it a filing for a hearing?
He has filed, I believe,
Yep.
or he gave me the paperwork that he's about to file.
Yeah, he may not have set up the hearing yet then. They would send out the hearing notice through the Conservation Commission.
Okay,
Yes.
can I ask one
If you're,
I don't know if again applies here or the next meeting, but then what's the protocol or the law about the measurements of the driveway and the buffer zone between adjacent properties? Does that go here or that?
that will go to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
So that's the one on June 2nd?
Yes, exactly. That is their jurisdiction, absolutely.
All right.
Okay. People know. Thank you. It'll take us a week or so to write up the permits and send them certified.
Okay, you want me to send you a proposed driveway?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That would be great.
Because that'll change tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
You can't be on baseball field, it's too cold out there tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This was
It looks smaller already.
She's been on medication.
No, I can see a difference from when you came in. It looks,
Stationary appointment with the cardiologist every 2 weeks.
Are you here for the
The
project, the oval permanent extension?
Oh, okay, okay, great, sorry.
That's right.
Are you, Chairman?
no, I'm Maureen O'Toole, I'm the executive director.
Oh, faces you know the faces yet to know it. Thank you. Yeah, we'll get to that in a few minutes, we just have a few other items, thanks. Thanks for coming too.
Alright. Okay,
Come back.
no.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything, Amy.
Because he accused himself.
Yeah, play it back.
Okay, go back.
Camera will show you that.
Duly
Thank
noted.
Alright, 7:25, we have a public hearing continuing on 0 Point Development Incorporated, Curtis Hill, Route 31, commercial solar array site plan application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the chairman knows, we had an interesting development the past few days, and Brendan Gove asked if I'd speak for him. He had a conflict this evening, had to go to another town. He's the chairman of Zero Point Development. As you know, it's the solar for leasing part of the Castigian farm, and he's getting into a redesign that he's requesting leave to withdraw this evening, and he'll refile. And to show you what's going on, one for Jane and one for Keith and one for Patty in that direction. And a couple for the audience too, I know because our EDC members obviously reviewed this at EDC. As you know, the application before you was to bring the driveway in from Route 31 up the hill to the back of the land by the railroad, and that would be the driveway with a gate at the bottom, a gate at the top for use by the solar company to occasionally have their guy go in with a pickup truck and maintain and operate it. They've run into a major problem with National Grid. National Grid has just refused to run an underground line up that way, and he's committed to the neighborhood that he will underground. He had a neighborhood meeting a few months ago with everybody up front, and it went apparently very well. National Grid has insisted that if he wants to go underground, he has to come in from Curtis Hill Road at the end, and they want the driveway to come in that way too. And so he's meeting with the neighborhood next week, and he'll represent to the neighborhood before he resubmits anything, and he is going to do his best to provide them with the assurance that this is not a ploy for the future subdivision. His landlord, Blair Builders, is still committed to not using Curtis Hill Road at the request of the neighborhood for the future subdivision. The future subdivision will eventually come up where the driveway is, and Clea Blair will underground at that time. And even though Mr. Blair has told National Grid, if I put it in writing to you that my future subdivision is undergrounding, why can't you let my tenant do that? They've said, go get planning board definitive subdivision approval and then we'll allow you to. Very difficult situation. So what he'd like to do is withdraw without prejudice this evening, this plan, abandon it entirely, meet with the neighborhood next week, hopefully get their support for a gravel driveway with a gate just for his solar in here, and they assure the neighborhood with Mr. Blair present that it's not a ploy for the future subdivision road. They're sticking with their commitment from Route 31, and then resubmit from scratch with a redesigned driveway coming in and such. And so he asked if you would vote to allow him to withdraw this evening, and he'll resubmit in the future.
I have a letter here from May 20th, 2015, to the Charlton Planning Board in regards to the Curtis Hill Solar Project. Greetings. This letter has been drafted on behalf of 0 Point Development Incorporated site plan application for the Curtis Hill Solar Project submitted March 19, 2015. On behalf of the applicant, I am requesting the planning board withdraw the application without prejudice. Do I have a motion to accept this letter as read?
Is there any repercussion that can come back? Like, we just totally forget about this plan?
Yes, that's his choice. He is planning on completely forgetting about it because he's just decided that's the way he has to go. They do not want to go through the above ground, both for antagonizing the neighborhood and also the cost of the waste of it that he will underground eventually anyway, he doesn't wanna duplicate it, and so he said, I might as well just go with the permanent underground.
So then he'll
And-
resubmit when he gets everything in order that he
Yeah,
wants to.
I think he's gonna resubmit fairly soon after he meets with the neighborhood, either next week or the week after he meets with them, he'll resubmit, and then you'd have a hearing probably in July.
Any other concerns with the board?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passes. Anytime.
Can we do one more small item, and then since everyone else here is for the village district? Just one item before we get to our village district planning project. We have a letter from attorney for Charlton Orchards, Donald Canoia, on behalf of Nate Benjamin and his client. They've submitted to the town a Chapter 61A withdrawal request. They're working through Burton Engineering to lease 6 acres of Charlton Orchard to a solar company. And so they're doing the 61A tax classification withdrawal, and that's the request for planning board, assessors, conservation, select board to all comment to the applicant. You've only commented for the town to consider right of first purchase if it abuts a school, and there is no school. And it'll be right abutting a partial, there's a map attached to it, a 6-acre portion of the orchard that is near Route 20 but won't be visible at all. You know how the hill goes up and over, so no one will know it's there from any abutting property or any roadway.
I'm gonna read part of this correspondence, and then I'm gonna open this up to subjects for discussion. It says here, please be advised that I represent Charlton Orchard Group LLC. On behalf of my client, please allow this letter to serve as a notice of interest to convey for other use. MGLA 61A, 6 acres on property located at 44 Old Worcester Road, Charlton, Mass. 01507, which has a parcel ID number of 36-C-10. The reformation portion of my client's land will be leased to Sun Connection Corporation for the purpose of a solar development. I'm a little confused here. Is it part of the orchard that Charlton presently owns?
Yes, he's got his orchard in what they call, under the assessors, Chapter 61A
it's not
tax
Fairmont.
classification.
Okay.
It's not famous.
No, it's Charlton Orchard.
It's not
yeah.
famous. It's
Now on Route 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Now clear.
to take those 6 acres out, the town, he has to do a certain back tax payment.
Yep.
And B, the town through the select board have the right of first purchase. That's the way the state law is. So the only time this planning board has ever suggested that the select board consider looking at it is if it abutted a school and you think you might need it for school expansion. And this is, obviously, it's right on Route 20.
It's top of the hill.
It's the top of the hill. And so what we usually do is vote, and send a letter to the attorney for the applicant and CC Select Board Conservation Assessors that the planning board has no issue with it.
So their next step then is to go before the selectmen and a few others to
Yes.
see if they can take it out of.
Yeah, they'll go before the select board and you're commenting, the assessors are commenting in conservation. The state law lays it all out for the tax law.
So they're just asking for our approval to take it out?
They're asking for your comments whether you have an issue with it or not on the tax classification. Right of first refusal, are you recommending the selectmen exercise that right of first purchase, I should say? And you've only done it twice before when it abuts a school and it doesn't abut a school.
Right.
So I don't have any issue, I'd recommend that you have no problem with it.
Do I have a motion to make a recommendation that we don't have any issues with, taking this out of chapter 61A?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes.
I'll write it up, thank you. Should we go right to village?
Sure.
If EDC would like to come up and jointly, no, you comfortable? This is the final night to complete the plan, and then we can all work together over the next few years and actually implementing good things out of it. If anyone doesn't have a copy, we've emailed everyone in the room and given paper copies, but we have more. Does anyone want another copy of the village district plan in front of you? Okay. And I'll summarize briefly, and put this on the table. Everyone in the room, plus a lot of other people, have done a lot of work the past 5 or 6 years. You created the village district from a master plan recommendation. You all worked with Ralph Wilmer from VHB, our planning consultant, who's done this nationally and throughout New England on when you have a nice village center like Charlton, how do you maintain the character but also have healthy economic development and growth and sustainability? And you've expanded it a few times. You've seen some nice projects come forward, like the Arts and Cultural Center, the Swadia Convenience Store, Brenda B. and Cooley's accounting business, a few small things like that that lead to some big steps. And then we were contacted last year by Central Mass Regional Planning. They have a grant program. And did we want any grant assistance for anything planning-wise? And the Planning Board and EDC both liked applying, and we got approval for a grant for them to provide free staff assistance, and that was Eric Smith, their planner, to come up with a village district action plan that would jumpstart and move things forward. And you had 3 working meetings, and one of them was downstairs in October, and Drew was nice enough to film it and give us DVDs of it for people. We had about 40 to 50 people there. I think almost everyone in the room was there. And even the Miller family, John and his son came down from Vermont. The week before, Patty and Joan came up from Virginia and met with us. Folks from the Overlook were actively involved. Other property owners were. And out of that, we had a final draft of the study, and tonight is one more look and discussion on what it's all about, and then also discussion tonight of where we go from here on implementing. If you guys want to introduce yourselves, because I've never met you guys before, but I know you both from Overlook, and thank you for coming.
Thank you. I'm David Dunham, Director of Facilities at the Overlook.
And I'm Maureen O'Toole, the Executive Director for the Overlook.
And you, other folks from Overlook, past and present, have been with us in the other meetings too, so welcome to the team.
Thank you.
I can summarize without going through a heavy presentation, because we've had the heavy presentations. What everybody brainstormed was opportunities within the current boundaries and looking outside of it for expansion. And we pulled in various property owners, both within and without, and even just people who live in it. And a couple of significant things came out of this as a recommendation. One is the boundaries themselves. If you're outside of the district right now, you're just in the R40 or the agricultural district, which is just large lot single family. If the districts are expanded for any of that property, you don't lose anything underneath, but you get to do so much more. You get to do the mixed use. You can do the smart growth. You can do retail, office space, mixed residential. You get the opportunity of the high-density clustered performance standards, so you can build something at more of a village-dense scale as opposed to suburban sprawl. A couple parties that have been interested, now that it's done, of moving forward with the board on a potential warrant article for expanding those boundaries. The Miller, I call them the Miller kids, 2 sisters and a brother, but they're older than me. John Miller Sr.'s kids. Like I said, they've come up from Virginia, they've come down from Vermont. John Jr. is a planner for the state of Vermont, the Act 250 program. And so he felt very strongly that this is something the family is very interested in. So they'd like to work with you beyond tonight as part of an expansion. Folks at the Overlook have talked about part or all of your property to some degree, particularly the old hotel building and 2 other buildings you have, I think Wellington and
Williams and Davenport.
Williams and Davenport, in that right now you can't do too much beyond what you've got up there, but the village district zoning expansion would just open it up for a variety of things you could do in terms of tenancy and mixed variety and such. Also, if you did something new from scratch. Rich Kayer has brought up that he's been on committees at St. Joe's Church, and you've got the meadow and the field between 31 and the church, and he spoke to Father Bob a while ago. And so there's interest from the church of possibly being part of an expansion for what they could do in the non-developed part of the church property. Kenny LeBlanc wants to just move forward with you within the district, and Ken came to 2 of your meetings recently, and he's proposing at the southern end, where you expanded last year, a 30,000 square foot mixed use where the old agricultural landscape business used to be. He's very interested in a restaurant, some apartments, and he'd like commercial space to either bring in auctioneering or antiquing, similar to what he sees in Putnam, Connecticut, and he's talking to people in Connecticut about that. I can't name the person, I can only name the realtor at this stage, because they've requested confidentiality, but Realtor George Goulis has brought a potential developer in for an acre parcel in the northern part of the village right now that would knock down an abandoned house and do a mixed use of a couple of shops or office space on the first floor and 2 to 4 apartments on the second floor. So all of that is blending between development plans that'll come in the district and the boundary. Second thing it recommends in here is possible changes to the zoning bylaw. And here they're recommending, because there's not much to change since you wrote it with our consultant out of the master plan, but some of the ideas along the lines like Ken LeBlanc's antiquing aren't specifically referenced in the bylaw, and they said, why not amend the use table in the next year and add that stuff in? Also, for our cluster residential bylaw that allows you to cluster a higher density, it's not allowed in the village district. We wrote it for the R40 and the agricultural, and he's recommending that we write a village district version and put it in the bylaw. So maybe for larger pieces like Overlook and the Miller property, they could do residential cluster in addition to mixed use on undeveloped parcels of it. And then he mentions various possible grant programs that might be amenable, and there's a new program that next week the Highway Superintendent Jerry Foskett and I are going to meet with CMRPC on. It's referenced in the study called the Complete Streets Program. It's a demo program from the Federal Department of Transportation that we're not sure exactly what the details are. They're going to tell us when we meet with them at Central Mass, but they feel the fact that you've created the village district makes you eligible for potential sidewalk money to match private sidewalks, public sidewalk money to match private. So for instance, if Ken LeBlanc is doing some development down there and you require a sidewalk segment, the Complete Streets could extend it with public money farther north. So Jerry and I are going to meet with them next week and see the details of that and report back to you. So that's a summary beyond the facts of it. I think the most hit the ground issue is continuing to talk with the Millers and the Overlook people and the church about the expanding of the boundaries. Also, Robin Craver, the town administrator, had brought up last fall when we started talking about it that the selectmen were interested in, if the boundaries expanded, to include the Arts and Cultural Center. That is outside of the village district. And either for a future tenant, or if they ever had to sell it someday or want to sell it, either way, the village district gives you more variety than just what's in there at the moment. So that's a fourth piece of that. I've been babbling. I just wanted to give you a refreshment and all that good stuff, but I'd be glad to add to the conversation beyond that. Thank you.
So, do we need some type of a motion to keep this thing rolling as far as getting it rezoned for those sections so that we can get that to a town meeting?
It's not so much a motion as just deciding to work with everybody and to do it, to prioritize it. What we would do is work with you guys and work with the Millers and reach out also, again, through Rich, to the congregation over at the church and see to what degree all of you. I think what it means is just sitting down during the day with the maps and our people to see how you'd want to expand. You want to do all your property, part of it. Eric, our planner, and I walked it, our consultant and I walked it last year twice with George Senerth and just looked around. And at that time it was very fluid. He didn't say anything specific about where, but I think some decisions have to be made about just where you'd like the boundaries and how to run it. And we can work with you on that and even roll up our sleeves and brainstorm with you either at a planning board meeting or just field work during the day. And the same thing with the Millers. They've been saying that they'd like most of their property to go in, but when you get farther north near Route 20, they'd like to keep the character of that more out of it and more for the Route 20 corridor. And then it's up to the church whether they want to go in or not, and Rich would be our point person there. And really easy to put the Arts and Cultural Center, and our surveyor that we eventually have draw up the legal bounds, which is to the property line on that. I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but have you had any thoughts about to what degree you might want to go in or not, or?
No.
And I'm somewhat new to the area. I'm curious on what the current boundaries are and what the proposed expansions are for.
If you'd like to
boundaries.
come up, the map's right here. I mean,
Yeah, I can see it right here. So the
there you go. And if you want to hand another one back to Pete and Sabrina so everyone can take a look.
thank you.
Right now, as you see, it's an aerial photo underneath. So the green is the boundary, and when we first put it in, it only ran along the front of your property on the south side of Route 31. So you can see clearly where your property is, and it's pretty simple, just working with a surveyor to put together meets and bounds and a boundary map to go with a warrant article that would just expand farther south to encompass whatever proportion you want to propose.
Because presently this would be included into the warrant article, stuff that's striped.
No, that's actually just, Bill Holgren asked to have it put on for information purposes years ago. That's the historic district.
Right.
It's just as a cross-reference. So right now, this doesn't show the expansion. They, on their property, could decide to what degree they want to expand. The Millers are right here, heading all the way up, so them. The town Arts and Cultural Center is right down here. And then the church is right there, and you can see that their property is like that. So to what degree may they want to or not want to maybe go in for future church opportunities, you know, on the non-developed portion.
The police station is in,
Police station is right about here.
Yeah, right about there, you're right. Yeah, I think it's right on that block.
Yeah, yeah.
Convenience stores here, which one's up here?
That'd be Charlie Guy's house, little field next door.
Yep.
So is this part of the proposed expansion right here?
now, for the people who are currently living single-family homes there or whatever, how does that affect them?
Excuse
Does
me?
it, the owners of homes that are within that district, does it affect them, or?
No, because the village district didn't take away anything from previous zoning when we created it several years ago. It just adds more uses beyond just single family.
So in the future, they could do something else?
Oh yeah, they're
Okay.
they're perfectly fine.
They're good.
That residential component did not go away. The agricultural, the R40 is, types of uses are also allowed in the
So
village.
it's actually an advantage to them, because when they sell, they can sell for, if they wanna put a
A
bakery
different
in there.
use.
When you expanded a few years ago down to here, if you recall, you invited that homeowner to the hearing, and he said he had reviewed it, and he said, I'm all for it too, to go through my property. It just gives me more options someday when I either sell or decide to do something different. And that's where Mr. LeBlanc's property is, within the district, where he's proposing his village district project. And the other one I mentioned that Mr. Goulis is representing somebody is just north of L. Stevens. There's an abandoned house there with an acre. It would go right there.
Now, what's realistic time frame? I know it all depends how fast people wanna make their boundaries, like would be the Millers or Overlook for town meeting.
Well, that's a very good question on the timing. The next two town meetings is a fall one in October, and there's another one a year from last Monday night.
Correct, yeah.
It really depends on two things. One, how quickly the people affected want to move forward, and also, there is some work involved in terms of working with a surveyor
Oh, yeah,
and meets
yeah.
and bounds and legal description and preparing a map. A couple companies have done that before for private petitioners and also for you. Burton Engineering, McClure Engineering, Jalbert, those are the three that petitioners and you, depending on who's sponsoring these things, turn to. And I think it's really the decision-making process. For instance, if Overlook needs to have meetings with your board of trustees and they have to go through stuff, the fall might be too quick.
Yeah.
You know, if the Miller family wants to choose some things over, if the church needs to go to a church working committee. So unless you have something really, really pressing that it's a use it or lose it project for some reason, it might make sense to prepare it over the summer and fall and get it for next May, but if you really wanna put some time and prioritize and get it going for the October town meeting, you can. I would defer to those who are most affected of which they wanna go for.
Because the Masonic home and the church has committees that they have to answer to, but the Miller family doesn't, and, is it possible to do 2 stages of this? Where we could get the Millers up and running, and then give the Masonic home and the church, who has to answer to a group.
You could if you'd like to and they'd like to, there's nothing wrong with that. The question of is whether you and they want to. We can pull the Millers into the conversation and ask them that, and if they feel they want to and you want to, sure. But if they say, well, we'll go along with everybody else, and they may feel that they need to think about it, talk to some family members, they might also just feel they wanna go in with everybody in a group rather than be exposed, or they might say, what you just said, yeah, we'd like to move forward, and everyone knows the family, and we'll come to town meeting in the fall. If you'd like, I can just contact John and Patty on that.
Because, as you were saying, they were older than you were, and they may wanna get this thing, they may wanna get this thing going in their lifetime.
Good point, good point. I'd be glad to pose that question to them tomorrow if you'd like.
Don't use his exact words.
don't use
Yeah.
Yeah.
May I have a copy of one of those packets, please?
Oh, absolutely. You want a couple or one?
2 would be fine.
There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. In terms of the study, what I'm recommending tonight is just that you direct me to let Eric know that he can print out a final version of this with a cover, with table of contents, acknowledgements, and then we can go to printing so everyone can have the information and also post it electronically. But that's just the icing on the cake. I think it's really heading now into what we do from everything we've looked at.
Do you have a motion to, give Alan the okay to take the CMRPC proposal and, forward it?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
So at this point, in terms of timing, we certainly be looking for some input from you of beyond tonight of, do you wanna move forward in the fall or the spring? And I realize you have boards, you have a structure. You also have to make some decisions about to what degree you'd like to go in. I guess the only point I'd make, cause it's the first time we've had this conversation, is we don't have any particular agenda of wanting to push it for any particular goals of ours. We just think it's a win-win for everybody. It does meet our goals of planning for the village district, but there's no agenda in terms of wanting you to do something that we haven't discussed. It's just a great opportunity to give you more options.
Right.
And especially since you've got a couple of really nice buildings up there that you'd like to think of doing something differently. But also you've got vacant land it could be good for too.
Agreed.
Yes. So, could I just, from your end, like, next steps, you had said possibly St. Joseph's plus maybe the Millers, that we get together with you or someone just to kind of,
Yeah.
or maybe just us to walk our land.
Yeah.
But then,
Yeah, you'd probably continue what we did before of myself along with someone like Eric Smith, who's the planner, who's
Okay.
worked with us on it, meet at your site. If you want us to walk around with you, to sit down with you and other people, staff or boards, and answer any questions or provide you with any information that helps you make the decision of how you wanna lay it out. And we'll do the same thing, continue the same thing that we've already gotten going with the Millers, and if the church is interested or not.
okay,
Again, I'm not committing anybody to the church, it's just that Rich Kay, our EDC member, who's a congregant, has given us the input that he spoke with Father Bob, who thought it was a very positive thing to keep looking at.
okay.
And so if they wanna go in, fine, also. And then the Arts and Cultural Center's a no-brainer, it's just add the boundaries in it. You know, that's no real dialogue on that, so.
Alan, can you explain the process of how you technically add that, once you decide which properties are gonna get added and to what extent, the process to make that happen?
A very good question, Pete, because some folks might not be aware of it. We would draw up, not an official plan, it's just a reference map, showing the boundaries that are proposed and meets and bounds. And we use one of 3 engineers, the planning board. We would have our land surveyor do that. We would either use Graves Engineering, our peer review, we would use Burton Engineering, who's done it occasionally, or we'd use Chris McClure Engineering. And then we'd put together a warrant article for town meeting, and it would be a petition to amend the town zoning map. The question then is whether the planning board sponsors it or whether the private landowners sponsor it. Usually when it comes out of a study, the planning board is the sponsor, and it gives more support and comfort to folks that it came out of a well thought out process. And then the planning board is required to hold a public hearing under state zoning law, usually about a month before the town meeting. The planning board advertise in the local newspaper. When it's a zoning map, state law does not require it, but the planning board's policy for about 10 or 12 years has been, anybody affected by it, we send an invitation. We let the neighborhood know, and they can come and meet with us at the hearing. Then the board will vote a recommendation to town meeting under state law, and the board will present that recommendation at the town meeting. And under state law, a zoning map amendment needs a 2/3 vote of town meeting.
What will be the timeline for that meeting?
Good question. Again, the fall town meeting is usually from mid to late October.
The town has 2 town meetings per year. The annual is the 3rd Monday of May every year, and the fall town meeting is a supplemental town meeting to do some catch-up stuff. That usually takes place in the fall, in October and November.
So if you're thinking of the fall one, you'd be looking at like a September planning board public hearing, and prior to that, anywhere, probably starting right in July at the latest, we'd need to make some decisions and telling our engineer what we want on the map.
So you need the buy-in from all the parties involved in order to proceed with that study. So you would conduct that study with your engineers, prior surveyors.
Well, not all of them. As the chairman said, if some of them wanted to move ahead and one of them doesn't want to, we'd still move ahead and do them in another phase. So, but we need buy-in from anyone who wants to, yes. And we really need to get going in July on the map preparation. July and August for the map preparation and going over with you and making sure your people, it's exactly what you want. And then a September warrant article with a hearing, and then an October actual town meeting review and vote, if you want to shoot for the fall.
Yeah, I think that gives enough time for Maureen to get that feedback from the board on that buy-in, so. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay.
I think you guys need more of a little more structural with a board.
Yes.
The church has a board too, I'm sure, but I think they probably are a little less detailed as you guys. And then the Millers are just, it's a family decision. Mm.
And the Arts and Crafts Center would just be a town.
Yeah, Robin Craver had said that the selectmen want to do this. So obviously we'll go back and communicate with them, but I think she'll just reaffirm that. And then all you do is you add it in, and it's just the boundaries of the property, so there's no shooting lines. See, I really think in your case particularly, we'll need our surveyor to go out there and shoot some lines in the field, unless you said follow your boundaries. I don't know if you want to do all your property and follow the boundaries or not.
Well,
It's up to you.
Let's present to the board and see how they feel about it. I see it as opportunity. I think Maureen sees it as opportunity as well, so.
Great.
Do you need a couple more copies so that you
That'd
can
be great,
pass them out
sure.
to the board?
Yes. Thank you.
If you give me an email too, although I think I emailed Tamara already, but if you give me an email tonight, tomorrow I can also email you an electronic copy too, if you want to share it with folks.
You can just forward it.
Perfect. I'll email you in the morning.
Thank you.
But Alan, just to reiterate, because of the village district has so many different opportunities, you wouldn't be looking to pile more than one of these future expansions together to move forward. Whoever's ready, it's almost a first come, first serve. So case by case, whoever's ready, we can move forward at one town meeting and subsequently move forward with the others as they come forward.
And that's
It's
what
not all or nothing.
What
Right.
Pete Sarkis brought up also, that there's no problem. You could, if everyone's ready at the same time, great. If one or two parties want to do it, move forward. Another party can do it at an upcoming town meeting.
Yeah.
We've done one. We initially adopted the village district probably about 6 years ago, and then we did one expansion for Mr. LeBlanc about 2 years ago. So, you know, zoning is fluid. It doesn't always have to be all in one shot. There's no reason not to do that. Absolutely. So let's look at one scenario that you want to go for the fall, and if the Millers others say, we'll do it next year, great, we'll go for the fall for your piece, and next year will be phase 2.
Or vice versa.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
I don't see any need in the fall to get into any language bylaw revisions. Some of what Eric suggested on thoughts, that could be next May, because it's small, it's minor, and no one particularly needs it at the moment for anything. I would concentrate right now on first dealing with map revisions, and then whether or not you want to make any tweaks in terms of some language here and there. It's nothing crucial, it's kind of
Yeah, the
superficial.
only thing that was really left out of language was, like an antique village or anything.
Yeah, and I kind of
that's-
defer to Ken, and he seems
Yeah.
okay not to run for the fall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Any other questions from hopefully participants?
No, that's fine, thank you.
Thank
Again,
you.
Eric and I would be glad to come up during the day and sitting down with you guys or walking around anytime.
I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Do you want to take one of those boards?
That'd be wonderful,
Yeah,
Ray, I was gonna ask you
great.
that, but
Absolutely.
thank you.
All right. If nothing else, we're gonna move to our next agenda item. All right. Thank everybody for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thanks.
Want to go back to your A&R?
Yeah, if you wanna do that, we can just leave it.
No, you're here. Yeah, there. Do some A&Rs?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Just the 740 stuff?
8:05.
8:05, sorry.
Okay.
I'll grab the paper copies in a minute, but Jason's A&R, you know Jason from Burton?
No, I'm sorry.
Jeremy. I always confuse the two of you. I call
Everybody
him,
does.
I call him
Jason.
Jeremy all the time. Okay. Let me grab the paper copies, sorry. He walked the Mylar in tonight because it's a 2-town A&R.
That's fine.
And he just came from, it's East Brookfield,
East
right?
Brookfield, yeah.
East Brookfield Planning Board signed their side of it tonight. I'll explain it if you wanna add anything. What his client is doing on North Sturbridge Road is breaking out from their larger property a house lot to go just with the existing house. Right now, it's all the bigger piece. And I forgot if he's staying in the house and selling that or selling the house.
Right now, he owns this lot, which is vacant, and then he owns this house, which is on 25 acres.
On the whole thing, yeah.
So he wants to basically sell this house with a smaller lot so he can build on this bigger lot now.
How would you have access to the rest of the
He-
25 acres?
He owns this lot right here.
Yeah.
These two lots would be conveyed, they're
So-
combined.
This lot would give access back up?
Yeah,
So this line disappears?
basically, yeah, they're combined. Yeah, if you read the note, it says they're.
Yeah, the note combines the two.
Okay.
Yep, good point though, to make sure,
Yeah,
otherwise it'd
it
be
looks-
landlocked.
yeah.
Very good point. And he put the setback line to show the new lot line's 25 feet, and it meets our setback. But,
So they're asking to cut this 25 acres and make one house lot here
yes.
and make this now the accessibility to the rest of the land.
Yes, and combine it through that note, so that lot line isn't separate. The note abrogates and combines the two.
This would be enough road frontage for a combination of going up into that.
Yeah, it's 175.
Yep,
Okay.
yep, it meets the bylaw.
Yeah, it's kinda funky, the frontage is in Charlton and
Yeah.
the houses are in East Brookfield.
Yeah.
Now, what zoning would you go by? Road frontage, right?
You go by the road frontage by what town it is, so it goes by
Yeah,
ours.
okay.
Yeah, exactly. If they had a more severe or less severe frontage,
Yeah.
they'd have to defer to Charlton.
Gotcha.
That's very weird, that's Massachusetts for you.
Yeah, I think it's over, it meets both towns.
What is their frontage?
East Brookfield.
Oh, it's on here?
Charlton, East Brookfield, frontage is 150.
Yeah, we have more than that.
So their area's only 30,000 too. It's actually commercial
I
zone.
remember driving on North Sturbridge Road one day,
Yeah.
and I saw a house being built.
Yeah.
It was like almost done, so I stopped and I go, Charlton Plumbing Inspector, I've never inspected your house. He
East
goes,
Brookfield.
yeah, because you're not in Charlton.
It might have been this one had something in the back.
I said, oh,
Oops, sorry.
really?
Yeah, it's fine. Thanks.
I didn't realize the line went
Yeah, it's
off the road.
a wild situation, yeah.
It's different, huh?
Yeah.
So what, Could the kids go to either school?
The way I've seen it on the news in Boston that some school districts go by where the bedroom is located, and if a house is right on a town line, they actually come out and inspect what town the kid's bedroom is in.
Oh my gosh.
And it made the Boston news a few times in the previous years because the parents go to court and sue,
Yeah.
saying, I want my kid in that district and I don't care that most of my house is in that district. Why does it matter where his or her bedroom is?
Imagine if it was split,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you got two kids going to one school.
School,
district,
kids
one
in
goes
What's
to
the
the other.
mailing address for the houses though? The
Yeah,
actual.
I mean, you're paying taxes in
Yeah,
both
it is.
towns, right? So
Yeah.
you should be able
So,
to take
when,
each
if you send somebody a letter, do you send it to Charlton?
I don't know. It's up to the postmaster.
Postmaster.
Postmaster makes the decision.
It's a very similar project.
That's why on another
as
thing tonight.
Charlton Street, right by the Oxford Charlton Town Line.
Yeah, his mailing address is East
Part of them
Brookfield.
houses are in
Huh?
Oxford,
Yeah.
part of them are in Charlton.
It's
No, Charlton,
When you
excuse
look
me.
at
the
that
Postal
street,
Service
that's
decides.
also-
Yeah.
Has to do what they say.
Houses on the
They're in
lot,
charge of
that's
the
some frontage in
Yeah.
Child,
Charlton.
weird.
Yeah, the school district, if you're paying taxes in that town and you, it doesn't matter, you have to residentially be living in that town by our law at Department of Education for a school district. So your mailing address, your legal mailing address needs to be in that town, if we would step in and fight that battle for you. But we don't mess with Boston, but,
So Alan, what,
The bottom signature block.
Mylar is signed by East Brookfield.
Yeah.
They've gotta re-sign this one too.
No, well,
those
no,
are our
these are just
copies.
copies.
Yeah, those are for us.
Okay.
So,
They
all-
signed a Mylar.
Yeah.
Go in there.
So we would, if this gets approved, we would sign this piece and this lower half.
Yes, yep. And he will take the Mylar back and file at the registry, the piece that has both planning board signatures on it. And all we need, these are our internal ones, so
Yep.
we just need your signature.
Do I have a motion to accept this A&R plan as we've just reviewed with the site frontage and that?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye? Okay. Guess we'll sign it.
Send it to town one and
I'll
one.
let you get it.
Oh, yeah,
I'll
well,
let Al do it.
Yeah, just
wondering
make
if
sure
we
the
had to.
Mylar's dated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the one that was done previous
That was
had
signed.
both signatures too, so.
Were you there tonight?
Eastbrook, yeah, just left there at 7:30.
We just signed one of these, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jane,
and
Jane
just
will,
make sure you do.
Jane will stamp the
When you
rest.
come across that thing, you get a frontage in East Brookfield.
Actually,
Create a
if you
road,
will,
right?
17th coming up
So it creates
is
another-
it drainage and sound?
Yes,
Sunset.
yeah. And it'll be in the library across the street.
That's gotta make it to grades.
Yeah, the sooner the better.
Yeah.
To give us time and
Jean,
if he wants,
she was
has any other
eight
questions or
miles.
stuff, there might be,
Yeah.
might be one more turnaround before.
Sure, yeah.
Are you working on that yourself? Or?
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
Kinda waiting on the sound thing, but I guess it's-
That makes sense. We had, again, Mr. Burlington was on the agenda, but pass on that, he has to just add notes and put
Yep.
it on for your next meeting.
No problem.
And we have a third one. I'll wait till you're ready. I can wait a minute, no problem. Just put this right here. Piece of ours. There you go. Give that to you.
Yep, I got one.
I never knew that East Brookfield sandwich
It's expensive. It's 49, right? It's like 49.
Alright, we've got another A&R plan, and can you walk us through this?
Sure.
Alan?
Rick Parra submitted this for a client, the gentleman's last name is LeBlanc, I don't think he's from Charlton, but he bought the property last year and it's called Property Solutions Real Estate and Contracting LLC, and it's on Oxbow Road, and it's all one big piece. So the gentleman had spoken to me a while ago,
See you, Jeremy. Thank you
a
for
few
that.
months ago, and also talked to Kurt Meskis about, he said, I'd like to break off the house and probably sell the house and keep the rest of it. What's the best configuration? So Kurt and I both warned him, you don't want to landlock the rest of it that you're keeping. And so we really suggested that you keep two areas, because he said the idea is either just, most likely I'd like to look into subdividing someday, so you need a 50-foot right of way to put the road in, and if you want to go more than 500 feet, you're going to need two ways in. So he had Rick Parra design this to leave 60.5, 63.74, with a note that it's obviously non-buildable right now because it's just got split frontage, and this complies with the house, lot 33, with the requirements for our full frontage and enough lot area, which is 5.2 acres actually with the house. So this goes on the market once this is done. He keeps the rest of it, and he'd like to eventually have Rick do a subdivision plan in the future.
Would the subdivision plan in the future be very similar to the situation we just went through tonight?
Well, yes and no. He could design something that looks like that, yes, but he'd be coming in for a full road under Chapter 41, and he'd have to be doing a full-blown road, not a driveway, to create the lots back there. So you would have authority under that for underground utilities and for some things that you couldn't do previously tonight with the other one.
What is this dotted line in reference to?
Let me just get my bearings. Hang on, if I can see it. That dotted line. Oh, it's delineated by the environmental consultant in terms of related to wetlands layout. But I don't know specifically whether it's a buffer or it's in the wetland, but it's related to, he had environmental consultants, rare upland area, so it's related to wet versus dry. You'd have to get more into that in a subdivision in the future. Very wet on this property, but that would be part of anything he designed in the future. You know, for now, all he needs is the property lines. You can see basically the 5 acres is mostly wetland. He's got a house, dry area for yard, for the existing house, and everything else is wet. I think basically this is dry upland, this is dry upland, and he would have to somehow find a way to work with conservation to get a subdivision road in.
So the road going in would have to be under a subdivision
Yes,
ruling?
yes.
Now, what's the remaining acreage left over from those?
The remaining acreage is 22.5 acres.
Alright, so you could do 2 reduced frontage lots in theory.
In theory, he could also do that.
Another
That's a
option.
very good
Okay.
point. He could do, cause 63 and 60, he could do a driveway in,
Correct.
driveway in,
Yep.
or he could do the subdivision.
Correct. Yep.
Good point.
Being a driveway in on this side, we're not saying wetlands are up there, are we?
Well, actually, see, that's gonna be his ultimate issue in the future. The property is so wet, it's I don't wanna say it's questionable, but he's got an issue of whether he can do anything with the rest of it because of access issues. There's also the possibility that he could talk to these people, this was raised, about going in with them, they subdivide, and they come in that way, and they never even come in through here. So he's got a lot of possibilities and gray areas, but none of it is a problem with selling the house on a separate lot. But if he wants to do more, it may be much more advantageous to go in with an abutter. That could be it too.
So, alright, so tonight we're looking at taking this piece, cutting it out.
Yep.
Which meets the road frontage, acreage. This will not become landlocked for at least one house,
Yes.
and if he possibly wanted to do something else other than one house, he would still have enough frontage?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Because it would need at least 50 feet to do that, and he's got 63. Yep.
Okay. Would there be enough dry land for at least one house up here?
Yes, the main issue would be crossing any wetland to get to it, but yes. The dry land, I'm not sure how much dry is in here, but he's definitely dry back there. he'd have to get further into that with a future proposal. He'd have to have a wetlands guy flag it more detailed.
Okay. Any more questions of that? A&R? Do I have a motion to accept the A&R plan for Oxbow Road as drawn by, Power Land Surveyor?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alan, what was the AI drive thing for Burlington and Frontage?
That was the one that would split the reduced frontage you reviewed tonight, but he forgot to put the footnotes we require into the special permit, so like Attorney Hurley said tonight, she'll have him do a revised one for your next meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll just put it on for June 3rd. Oh, we can go back to the 7:40.
Okay, town board commit administrators, for the Gunter Estate.
Thanks. Thank you very much. The Gunter Estates subdivision is just up for its annual definitive subdivision plan approval extension, and Roy Gunter, the trustee for Gunter Estates, asked if you just do the annual extension, to, I'm sorry, just get the date, to May 20th, 2016.
Renewal of subdivision approval for Gunter's Estate. Please have the planning board, commission, and or the board of selectmen consider renewing the subdivision approval for the Gunter Estate off of Boucher Road and Homestead Road. Unfortunately, moving forward with bids and subdivision request permit. He's asking for an extension to, May 20th,
Of 2016.
2016.
Yes. Yeah, I wrote 15.
Do I have a motion to extend this till, that timeframe?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And one other extension, Tamara Campbell from Overlook had emailed me. They're due tonight for the special permit annual extension for the wind generation. And she said they really believe they will not be building it. But on the other hand, she said, because we've had a staff turnover and she's fairly new, she doesn't wanna rescind anything until she gets more used to and they decide on everything. So she said, if we could have one more extension, with the understanding that, you know, the project is not, looking very strong right now, but I have no problem giving them an extension to give them some decision-making time.
Do I have a motion to extend the wind generating project for Sonic Home for one more fiscal year?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Growth management?
The main thing I had under growth management was two things, village district and just, two other items related to our housing authority projects. We're looking good on the path grants, and, I'm just working on paperwork with Phil DiMartino, who is our manager. He's the gentleman who's our grant manager. Again, it's a fiscal year contract, so he's putting a contract together that I would put on your agenda in June for one of your 2 June meetings. that would give the board the $20,000 grant that would start July 1st. I am asking him though, and I hope to have an answer in a day or two, just because we haven't connected with each other, if we can start in June though with Bill Scanlon and with Mike Andrade, because part of the grant is local match. And I don't think he'll have a problem with that we might as well start in June just to move it forward. But parts that we will bill to the grant will be from July 1st on. Anything in June will be our local match, that type of thing. And then the other one is, I talked to you the other day, and if you want to update the board about where you guys have made a decision of the moment regarding our Meadowview proposal.
Did you get my letter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
The Housing Authority at their last board meeting really took a hard look at this, and what we were originally planning was to do like 26 additional units on the same site down there. Due to feasibility for the developer, nobody wanted to do it for less than 40 units. And we looked really, really hard at it, and because of where the one building was gonna go wouldn't be a problem, because to get that many units in, it was gonna probably be 3-story buildings. Yeah.
Fire department would have some issues with that, okay?
I don't know, but we don't,
The height.
doesn't matter now, because of that. And it would be like more units would be built under this other plan that we wouldn't have as much control over than what is originally there. We just felt that was not the place to put 40 units. So we've sent letters out to everybody who we dealt with, saying that at this time we're just not proceeding with it. And if something comes up in the future, that we would still like to work with all the people who gave us such wonderful service and direction. So that's pretty much.
Did you try to put it on hold for now?
Yeah, more than just hold. We've, like, the developers that came in, we told them that we're not gonna go ahead with the 40 units. You know, if something comes up at a later date at another site maybe,
There's also the possibility that, you know how fluid state funding opportunities are. Maybe, especially since the Baker administration is new and they need to advance how they want to run these programs,
yes.
maybe they would change the funding policies up there, which are just working policies, that would allow you to go with the original number of units, and they provide more funding that makes it more feasible for the developer partnership.
I had a conversation with Paul McPartland yesterday, and said the same thing, you know.
What was his reaction to that?
Nobody really knows what's happening yet. We still have to get the budget straight around, and then the capital bill. And once we see how they treat that, you can see, you know, which direction they're gonna be going in. And I also sent the same letter to Paul, saying that we're not gonna go ahead with it at this time. And also, if they do decide, you know, we would still be looking at a smaller development down there. If the HCD wanted to do something smaller, that keep us in mind.
That's all I had in the growth measure. I had my list of other things, but the two housing authority and the village district was it for growth management. Thank you.
No other business you wish to discuss at this time?
Yeah, I do have my usual working
Yeah.
list, sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have to tell you that we're booming right now in terms of hearings, in terms of the field work and everything. And so just to refresh everyone's memory, we're on the same page for the next few meetings of what we have. For your June 3rd meeting, you've got 3 new public hearings. The site plan review for the miniature golf, Putter's Miniature Golf. You have authority on the name, no, you don't. With all due respect, I have a more exciting name. The Sampson Road, the intersection of Route 20 and Sampson Road solar that Waterman Design did for a Nexamp is also on for site plan review. And third new hearing is, and it came up very quickly through Jay Diderando, so some board members are aware, some aren't. The former car dealership building that's been vacant for a while, Incom they move very quickly for the client. They have a tenant that very quickly came in with McClure Engineering, and we filed the site plan for your next meeting, June 3rd. They call themselves Niche Hospitality Group. They own 7 or 8 really nice upscale restaurants in Worcester, and they want to move a smaller facility and expand it that is their own light manufacturing facility for both retrofitting and creating new restaurant furniture for the 7 or 8 or 9 restaurants that they own, and also either retrofitting or creating new kitchen equipment. So they need a site plan review because they're shifting the land use classification of the building from the previous recreation tenant, which was the recreation site plan you did. It should be a simple one-night review. McClure did a nice job on the plan. And that's on as your third one. For June 17th, your second meeting in June, you got the next session of the motocross and campground. And also, a young couple is submitted to reapprove an expired special permit for reduced frontage. They let it expire, their parents let it expire 6 years ago because they didn't want to build at the time, but now the kids want to build the house. So they've reapplied. Jane and I worked with them on putting the reapplication together. And then, again, the new resubmittal of the 0 Point Engineering, even if it comes in now, you're really looking at July for the hearing, just all of that. So those are the front burner ones. Regarding subdivisions, there's still that preliminary plan that Burton Engineering is putting together for part of Mrs. Nyland's property, looking at about a 10 to 12 brand new subdivision. And then we've had a lot of abutters come in lately now that Blair Builders is getting into both the Haggerty Landing and the Dresser Hill subdivision. On the Dresser Hill one, 5 or 6 abutters have either called or come in now that they see the activity, and some of them had some concerns, others were just curious. So that's very active, just to let you know. On one of your June meetings, I'll check with Water Sewer Commissioner Rob Lemansky, but either your June 3rd or June 17th, he'll be coming in for your annual touch base with water sewerage. And also, I told the EDC at that meeting last week that they're jointly invited whenever that comes up. Couple other items, I'm just going through my list. Jane and I wanted to propose your July-August schedule. Usually in the summer, you initially set one meeting for July, one for August, and then if needed, you add a second one. So we were both looking at the schedule of who's been working with us on stuff, and we were hoping the July one could be Wednesday, July 15th. And the August one would be Wednesday, August 12th, if that works for people. You don't have to finalize that tonight unless you're comfortable with it. Could always finalize it June 3rd if you need to check summer schedules for yourselves. It's up to you.
How's the volume?
Volume so far is, I'll be honest with you, okay, but I have a gut feeling we'll need to add at least one more meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as you know that this is a baseline,
Yeah.
and then we'd add something,
Oh, yeah.
if that works for you.
That was just my only point, if we're gonna have to add,
Yeah.
I think to accommodate.
Yeah, my guess is in August you'll need another one, but I think you're okay for July.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you on that. And then Jane and I, and we'll keep the chairman in the loop as our supervisor day to day, we've got a lot of use it and lose it time for the month of June. And so we're taking a combination of half days and full days scattered throughout the month. I'll be out tomorrow, if one done, but then I'll be back on Tuesday. And then last, just in follow-up to the town meeting's warrant article that approved a government study committee, Town Administrator Robin Craver sent around an email today that I thought I'd give you about appointing the committee and the details of who will do appointments of different seats. Anybody interested must be a registered voter in town, and how to go about requesting if you want to consider that appointment. So here's a paper copy of that email memo that went around. Jane, you can keep one. I did before. And last but hardly least, I just wanted to sincerely thank everybody for your support on my item the other night regarding the structure of my position. I both appreciate it and feel uncomfortable that everyone had to go to the amount of energy as volunteers that you have on that, but it means a lot to me, and I'm glad it all worked out well. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We're glad it worked out.
No problem.
Yeah.
So this committee that they would like to form would only be appointed for 1 year.
Apparently, it was proposed and approved as a one-year
Yeah.
study committee.
Okay.
There's no conflict for, current board members if they were interested?
I don't see anything
It just can't be a board of selectmen or the
Yeah.
town administrator.
Yeah.
That's the only restriction on current people serving on boards.
Yeah.
Does I need anything else?
Yeah.
One, do you think she'd be good for another night?
She's usually better. She's kind of cranky tonight.
She gets half a vote, so.
2 nights, 2 nights every other week.
Get a little older, she'll have a full vote.
I'm getting all my kids ready for, government boards and everything
Sure.
else, prep them early.
Starting young, yeah.
Get those merit badges, citizenship. I remember when I was a Boy Scout and I got the citizenship and the community merit badge, it required me to go to a Worcester City Council meeting.
Yeah.
I remember that.
It was like watching cartoons, kind of.
Do we
I
have
remember it very
any
clearly.
other,
Long night.
Yeah.
Alan, do you have any other miscellaneous items?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
What I'm gonna do is, we'll wait a few minutes for Ross to come back. If we could, wait for him to come back, we could look at the March 18th minutes. Look at them.
I'll put this in now and I'll write it down.
Okay.
Yeah, I gotta sign it. Um, Just, March 18th, we went into executive session,
Yeah, and
There's
that's a
another
separate,
set.
that's a separate set.
but then, did you put the date wrong?
We have a
March.
couple,
You have two.
we have a couple that we went into executive session.
Is it 2 regular and 2 executive session minutes you have? Right?
Oh,
3
okay,
regular and
okay.
2.
Yeah,
Is it? Okay.
yeah, but we can
Okay.
do that at different time.
What
Yeah,
what I'd like to do tonight is just do the minute. Russ, what we're gonna do is, we're gonna go through the minutes.
Yep.
For March 18th and March 14th.
Yep.
But I'd like to hold the executive
No
session
problem.
minutes for
Yep.
another night to vote on.
Fine.
So if we could all look at the March 18th one first.
Yeah. Ellen, on that PATH application,
Yes.
was that submitted under planning board?
It was submitted by the planning board, but in the narrative, we described that the project itself is a partnership between Housing Authority and
Okay.
Planning Board. But
They
the
asked
actual
about that,
application was a
okay.
planning board application, yes.
Okay,
With the support of the Bay Path Board of Trustees.
exactly.
Yes. That project might hit field construction before they know it.
And put more units on there.
That's right.
And do all the work, too.
Yeah. We got room.
That would make it a little bit more.
Could work out.
Do I have a motion to accept the March 18th, 2015 planning board minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I do have one brief thing I forgot that I thought I'd give you a handout at the next meeting.
Excuse me.
I did go to that regional trails meeting that we had last month. It was really good at Greater Worcester Land Trust, and I was really pleased that the Mid-State Trail, they're doing up some promotional brochures and handouts, and in this draft one they gave me, they've really highlighted the Charlton section. I mean, it's kinda nice. They took some photos and they kinda highlighted 4 sections to show variety along the route, and they just picked Charlton as one of them. So I'll get a more final version from Colin Novick at Greater Worcester Land Trust for your next meeting.
I think
We
with
had
one
a
of them.
very good friend coming up from the Boston area, and on his phone he has an app that, he's an avid hiker, him and his wife, and, also, and it highlights, so it will like, can you telling you there's really good high-rated trails.
Nice.
And he said to me that he didn't realize that Charlton had so many trails
Yeah.
Oh,
that
really?
were well
Oh.
good rated, yeah, isn't that kind of?
That's neat.
He also praised Roy Gunter Jr. in California, that in the past year he's worked with them on the phone to allow a segment of the trail to go through another piece of their property that was more on the road. And so, you know, he said that's a good example of how you can just work with people and they just agree to get it off road, that type of thing.
Do I have a motion for the March 4th, 2015, planning board meeting minutes?
I was in favor.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we'll, keep the other 2 for another night.
No problem.
You have
Wait, February eighteenth.
February 18th.
Yeah.
You can have mine if you want it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So that's 3
Give me
regular
a few
meetings.
minutes for you.
Yeah, do you think?
Yep.
Oh, this has been done. Sorry, I didn't get to read this at home the night, but in chaos lately.
Busy week.
Do I have a motion to accept February 18th, 2015 planning board meeting minutes as drafted?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
No.
Aye.
I thought of one other working item that came up today, just to keep you in the loop, and I should have brought it up while the EDC members were here, but I'll let them know. I had a very pleasant call today, a very interesting coincidence as we've been doing a lot of economic development. Sabarni Banerjee, the reporter and producer from Fox News Boston, called me today and said that, complete coincidence, I guess for the past 10 years, they've had a program that they randomly pick Massachusetts communities.
Zip trip.
Yeah, zip trip, exactly. And so it's our turn.
Yep.
So, next week, she's coming out on a working day to, first she'll meet for a few hours with Frank Morrow to go over historic elements in the town. Then she'll meet with me, on economic developments. And then the following week, they'll do the show live, either a Friday or Saturday morning from right in front of the town hall.
Yep.
Is it a Saturday morning?
No.
Friday morning.
Friday morning.
During the week.
And then she'll show a short film of what Frank shows her and what I show her. So what I went over with her today is, I gave her, in our conversation, a whole range of potential economic development things, and she decided to pick 5 of them. And I've contacted all 5 economic development owners of these businesses, and she's also contacted and owned a few small businesses in town. And she really spends a very short period with each of them, in which I'll go over with. She'll interview, they'll film, and then she'll edit it down for the following week into a nice variety. So all 5 were very excited and said, and they represent a nice variety. I will not disclose, because let her do the piece, in case she also needs to adjust something or has to put someone on the editing floor because of time period. But if she can do all 5 of them, I think it's a good indicator in that type of a short piece of what is really happening in economic development in town. and then Frank will combine it with the historical character of the town, and you have the best of both worlds combined.
Yeah, right.
Should we have people park their cars in front of town hall and make it look like we're open?
It's Friday, right.
It's Friday, nobody's here.
Convenient parking.
Convenient parking.
Yeah, the silver lining,
Yeah.
look at all the parking.
Yeah.
Good point.
This is the way our town hall is every day, Friday.
Yeah, that's great. Sounds like a plan.
Okay. Any other subjects anybody would like to discuss tonight before we adjourn for the meeting?
Nope.
Okay, that concludes the scheduled portion of our meeting for tonight. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.